Hello, and welcome to the Three Questions Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of wealth management and connect you with industry experts. I'm your host, Wayne Baxter, Senior Executive Manager at One Capital Management. Now, if you own a business and are starting to use artificial intelligence to help with legal or intellectual property issues, this episode is definitely for you. Our topic: the three questions business owners should ask before using AI to analyze their IP legal issues. Thank you for taking time to check us out. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Three Questions Podcast, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. Joining me on the Three Questions Podcast from Dallas, Texas is Mark Nielsen. He's a business and intellectual property attorney and a partner with Texas-based Sheaf and Stone. Mark has extensive experience helping business owners protect their intellectual property, navigate complex legal issues, and structure their company strategically. Now, today we're going to explore the three questions business owners should ask before using AI to analyze their IP legal issues. And Mark, who better, who better to address this than the great himself, Mark Nielsen? It's great to see you.
Always good to see you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
well, always. And as most people who know us well, or know us even a little, know that we're probably a little over the top in our NHL hockey fandom. And
A
I'll say
lot over
this,
the
just,
top.
yeah. Well, I mean, who else do I know who will text me in the middle of July with LA King line combinations and proposed trades? There's only one person, Mark Nielsen, right here in front of us all. Now, I will say this also. Mark has been for years pestering me. He wants us to do a hockey podcast, and I
You've been
have
resistant.
demurred. I have been reluctant. Let's put it that way. And well, maybe it's just because, I'm not sure Spit and Chicklets could handle the competition. Um, it's a rabbit hole that I can just imagine where we'd end up. And
Well,
but
Ray Whitney's now an assistant coach for the Kings, so he's
that's
out of there.
well, it's not Ray. No, that's not Ray Whitney is not. It's different Whitney.
Is it?
Yes, sir. No, Ray
Okay.
Whitney.
All
No,
right,
no,
delete that.
you're not talking about the Pink Whitney guy. No, Ray Whitney was somebody else entirely.
Okay. Glad you know that. I don't.
Well, like I said, one of the very few times that you will misrepresent the facts, Mark.
I try not to.
Well, you know what? I've decided I'm going to humor you a little bit here and inject a little bit of hockey talk into the podcast. So just so you'll feel like you're not completely not being heard. So I'm going to relate it though to the topic of today. So apparently there was some interesting trademark drama, at least behind the scenes, with the Utah Mammoth.
This is
And
true.
initially, their proposed name, or at least one of them, was the Yeti. What can you tell us about that situation from a trademark perspective? Apparently, there was some drama again behind this. I don't know how public it got, but you may have some intel.
It became public, actually. So hockey fans know that the Arizona Coyotes didn't quite make it in the Valley of the Sun, and the
They
team was
tried.
purchased by someone in Utah, and they moved the team to Salt Lake City. And the first year of their franchise's existence, they played under the name of the Utah Hockey Club.
That's
While
right.
they were doing that, they were polling fans to get a sense of what might be a popular name or popular names, and the Utah Yeti or Yetis, plural, was one of the popular names that the fans in Utah threw out there. And in that process, the hockey club, the corporation, I suppose, that owned them, filed a trademark application in the United States Patent and Trademark Office for the Utah Yetis. And that trademark application was refused. So they were refused registration. There were several issues, but among the biggest was the potential for a likelihood of confusion among consumers between the Utah Hockey Club and the popular, that we all use, the coolers and the cups. And there were some others actually as well. And at that point, as I understand it, the Utah Hockey Club may have actually approached the corporation that sells the Yeti coolers and cups and whatnot and said, hey, can't we get along and you do what's called a coexistence agreement that would potentially have allowed the hockey club to get over the hump in the trademark office and secure the name. Well, again, as I understand it, I didn't represent either of these parties. The cooler company said no. They tried to negotiate and couldn't work it out. It didn't work out. So at the end of the day, the Utah Hockey Club had to pivot, and they're now known as the Utah Mammoth. And there was even a little trademark issue with that, but I think I've probably said enough already.
Well, there you go, Mark. We got our little bit of hockey talking on the podcast here, so mission accomplished.
Thank you.
All righty. Okay, now back to our regular scheduled programming here. So it's everywhere now. The term AI or artificial intelligence, you can't go a day without hearing something about it. And we all know it's starting to make serious inroads, in the CPA space and lots of different places, and wealth management, of course, and also in the legal profession.
Yes.
So from a business owner's perspective, what are you seeing in terms of how AI is being used? I guess more importantly, what are some of the unintended consequences or even risks that clients of yours or in general business owners should be aware of?
Yes, probably a very few days go by when I am not asked how AI is impacting the legal profession, and it's profound. Um, from a business owner standpoint, I think the ways it can be helpful is business owners can query AI systems to get a better handle on, let's just say, possibilities for what may happen or what could be done in a given legal situation. And I think that is helpful. It gives them a little bit more context and, maybe help with even speaking, not so much legalese, but somewhere between a complete layperson and a lawyer. And it can be helpful. One of the unintended consequences, I sure hope it is unintended, and I think in most cases it is that clients, what I have seen in certain instances is that they are taking what AI says as gospel and bringing it to their lawyers and basically telling their lawyers what to do. And clients pay lawyers a lot of money. And at some level, they have a right to strongly suggest to their lawyers what they should do. But one of the unintended consequences is, and I'll just speak to this from my own perspective. I've been practicing intellectual property law for 25 plus years, and there's a lot of AI up here as well. There is there is a sacrifice of strategy, of experience, and a lot of minutia that AI systems don't do, can't pick up on, aren't trained on, whatever it might be, depending on what AI system it is. And clients, and so that creates a little bit of an issue. And clients actually think that they're helping by doing a lot of quote unquote legal research or whatever it may be on AI. But any good lawyer is going to carefully vet what a client brings to us. It's our duty to listen to our clients and take what they're saying seriously. So we have to vet that information they're bringing. And sometimes it is a strategy you would not adopt or a position you wouldn't take. And in that sense, a client has actually cost themselves more money
Because
than
the
just
amount of
allowing the
time you've had
lawyers
to
to do,
evaluate it.
and time, yeah, than just allowing the lawyers to kind of, direct the ship, if you will. And so, and this is a very new thing. This has been in the last year or two where this has really started kicking in the legal profession. So we're having to learn how to navigate that as well in a way that is respectful to our clients, but also trying to manage their resources and say, listen, we appreciate all the help, but all you're actually doing is causing your invoices to go up because we have to check all this stuff you're sending. Some clients, it's a little more sporadic, not a big deal. Other clients, it's a barrage. Like every day you're getting a 5-page email about what we need to do next. And that becomes difficult. But, sometimes buried in all that minutia, there's some good ideas. So that's why we have to look at it. And so from a business owner's perspective, I think understanding the nature of the attorney-client relationship and understanding that they may often think they're helping and they may not be. So it's probably better to have a conversation like that up front and this is probably more common in litigation, but if a litigation situation starts, to talk about how we're going to navigate the world of AI in the context of our relationship. And I can go on, there's other pitfalls we can get into about not plugging in confidential or privileged information into an AI system that or suspect may not be completely private. So I think there may be some more things we're going to discuss, and I'll get into that more. But that's
Well,
some of what
yeah.
I'm seeing right
Well,
now.
you definitely provided some great insight to get us off and running here. Our topic is the 3 questions business owners should ask before using AI to analyze their IP legal issues. And Mark, why don't we get right to our first question here?
Mhm.
Question number 1. I discovered that my competitor has been using content from my company's website in their advertising campaign. I've used AI to research how to respond to them. Will this work to resolve my issues? Mark, take it away.
Well, any good lawyer is going to, you know what the response is going to be. It's
It
going to be, it
depends.
depends.
It depends.
So again, we also have to think about what actually is AI. AI is a sort of query-based system that is pulling from whatever it's drawing from. You may not get 100% current information. I use AI from time to time as a starting point, and I check it, and it's not always accurate. So if a client says, and this is common, that some of my content's been ripped off or what have you, going to AI could be a nice starting place, and it could orient the conversation. The client comes to me, I think there's false advertising, I think there's been some copyright infringement, whatever it may be. But again, it's not a substitute for an experienced lawyer who's dealt with these issues. Because the thing with AI is the law really hasn't changed. It's just the ways to access the law have changed with with AI, making it much more accessible. You don't need a Westlaw or Lexis subscription necessarily. And so I think clients need to be careful not to take what AI says as
Good.
100% accurate. And it's okay to bring it to us and say, here's some stuff I found. I want you as my lawyer to check this. And also, if you think we need to go beyond this strategy, to do that. And so again, it gets back to that, having that conversation up front about how we're going to deploy AI in our relationship. That is important. But to again realize, just sitting here for myself, 25 years of doing this, if you just tell me what to do, you're cutting my experience out of the equation, which is not a good thing to do.
Okay, I got a follow-up question about this topic.
Hmm?
What happens? Suppose the competitor here doesn't cooperate and decides not to remove this content that they're being accused of pilfering.
Hmm.
How would you advise handling the matter if the client has already been using AI to guide their approach? What would you be?
You know,
I
the
can just imagine that conversation. I'd love to be a fly on the wall. Must.
So I'm going to start this with it's an illustration or an analogy outside the world of IP. But one of the things I understand that's happening quite a bit, especially in states like California that have very employee friendly laws, is employees who get wrongfully terminated or whatever it might be are starting to use AI to prepare their own lawsuits. And sometimes the content's pretty good, but there's mistakes. And then on the procedures, they don't know what to do. And it's frustrating for litigators and judges. And so bringing it back to your question, let's say Client notices their advertising content has been taken, and they use AI to themselves maybe send out a cease and desist letter. Hey, you need to take this down. And the other side says, no, we're not going to do that. That's the gist of your question. We don't think you have a legal basis to tell us not to do that. Client comes to me and says, what am I supposed to do now? I would review what was sent to make sure it is accurate. I would review what was sent to make sure it sort of made the right demands and in a sense, press the right legal buttons. And I would also I would try to use as much of what the client sent on their own as possible to avoid creating sort of a credibility gap or something of that nature. I mean, you don't want to adopt something that's not viable, but you also don't want to make it sort of like, yeah, what was sent before was not really
You
effective.
don't want to be contradicting everything that was said. Never mind what was, yeah.
Yeah, in that sense. And so
Mhm.
again, it gets back to that thorny conversation about, look, I understand you're going to use AI and check on things and suggest things, but let's just have a working understanding about our relationship and really understand that um, by providing me AI generated material, you may not be saving yourself money and you may not be coming up with or proposing the right strategy. So there's a happy medium in there, and we're all in this profession trying to navigate that and find that.
Okay, our topic today is the three questions business owners should ask before using AI to analyze their IP legal issues. And joining me on the Three Questions podcast from Dallas, Texas, is Mark Nielsen. He's a business and intellectual property attorney and a partner with the Texas-based Sheaf and Stone. And Mark has extensive experience helping business owners protect their intellectual property, navigate complex legal issues, and structure companies strategically. And he's been doing a great job of demonstrating his expertise here so far. Mark, why don't we move right on to question number two? My IP attorney sent me a report regarding a response to my patent application. Is it okay to put that report in my AI tool to see if it's a viable strategy? Mark, over to
Again, you're
you.
going to get the standard lawyer answer. It
It
depends.
depends.
And I'll explain why it depends.
Mm.
In theory, I do not have a problem with that at all. There's one pretty significant catch, which is patent applications throughout the world typically will become public 18 months after their earliest filing date or after their initial filing date. That's standard operating procedure. There are some caveats and exceptions to that, of course. So if an application is not published, I would be very hesitant to do that unless I was very confident that the AI system I was plugging that into was sort of a confidential, private. It wasn't just something public that the system would train on my material. And I think that's getting more and more common as people realize the confidentiality issues that could be raised by popping something into an AI engine. So applications published, no big deal. It's already public. It's on the USPTO website or some other website. Anyone can look at it. Fine, no problem. However, if it's unpublished, there could potentially be issues there. And I mean, I could come up with other caveats. There are ways to have expedited examinations of your patent applications in the US, and that might be within a window prior to your having to file foreign applications that depend on your US application. And if you were to put that office action, which is what the communication from the USPTO would be called, if you were to put that into a public AI engine prior to any publication and prior to your deadline to having to foreign file, you could shoot yourself in the foot big time
Hmm.
because you might be blowing the confidentiality of your application And what's interesting is, and in most countries around the world, your applications have to be filed there prior to any public disclosures of your applications.
Hmm.
And I don't know if plugging it into an AI system that is not private or confidential would be considered a public disclosure. I'm not sure that issue's even been litigated, but I'd really be hesitant to do it without knowing more on that question, because it's a requirement in most countries called absolute novelty. It applies in the EU, Japan, China, most countries, Canada, US, Australia. There's grace periods, but in most countries, you have to have this absolute novelty. And if you put something into an AI system and lose that, you might compromise your ability to seek patent protection in a lot of places. So if you're a large company and you try to protect your inventions in many countries, I would think long and hard about popping something into AI pre-publication.
Again, I shockingly do a little bit of show prep here. And one of the questions I was going to ask you is kind of along those lines of the risk of uploading confidential legal documents or attorney communications into a public or a third party tool. And on that note, are there best practices business owners should follow if they want to use AI to help them analyze, legal advice that they're getting? I mean, what's your take on that? First, I guess, first thing on the confidentiality issue, and then secondly, is there a best practice if they are going to take that route?
Yes, best practice number one would be to have a an enterprise or a more private AI system that's kind of within your organization only and isn't being used to train these systems. So the it's really a two-part question.
Yes.
The confidentiality, let's just say you work for a company and you've invented something that you think might be patentable. You haven't filed anything, you haven't made any public disclosures, there's no product available, it's all just within the company so far.
Mm-hmm.
And you take that and you put that into, Chat GPT and say, what in this is going to be patentable? There's a chance that that just started your clock for your 1 year deadline to file, because it's now been made, put into a public system essentially. Or with this thing, absolute novelty, that I just mentioned, you might be blowing absolute novelty. So putting
Right out of the gate, right out of the
right out of
gate.
the gate. So putting a proprietary information into a public system can present those kind of issues. Now, let me add a second layer to that. Confidentiality and proprietary information within a company, that's one thing. If a client takes, let's just say we're working on a patent application or we're in some litigation, and I send the client a long-winded, typical attorney kind of long-winded report about the ins and outs of some court ruling or a position that's going on in the case. And the client takes that and puts that into a public AI system. That there was a case out of New York, I think it was called Heppner, Heppner, that said that, yeah, that could blow the attorney-client privilege and
That's
lead
what
to
I was wondering
requirements
about.
to.
That's kind of where I was wondering, is that where that gets compromised.
That does, but there's been some, as sometimes happens, the pendulum will swing pretty far out in one direction, and there's been some other cases since then that have reined that in a little bit, but it is a serious concern. And another interesting concern is if you have clients using public AI systems and querying those systems about things in the case, there's discussions about whether those queries can be discovered in a litigation. And discovered mean, can an attorney make a request and say, every AI query you have put into a public AI system since inception of this case? And I mean, you'd think that's private information, but it might not be. So I love our topic because AI can be very helpful, but it creates so many concerns among attorneys. and concerns not only about us having to spend more time or maybe not liking to be told what to do, things like that, but it's concerns because the clients could be compromising their own confidential information or our attorney-client privilege communications unknowingly. They're certainly not intending to do that, but
No.
it just creates challenges, and that's again another reason why we would want to have a conversation up front so clients understand these things and don't just rush headlong into, I'm going to use AI and figure out everything about my case, because AI can be helpful, but AI can also create
It's like
issues.
having a do-it-yourselfer client on steroids, Mark.
Yeah, a little bit, a little
Yeah,
bit.
a lot of it. Okay, let's move on to question number three.
Hmm.
I am a big believer in the future of AI, and I'm wondering if there is anything responsible I can do with AI to assist my IP patent attorney with the legal services they are providing. I knew you'd love this one.
It is a good question. And one of the things that I do quite regularly on the trademark side of my practice is I will um, clear trademarks to make sure they are something the client can use essentially without possibly stepping on someone else's toes. Kind of
Hmm.
like the Yetis situation, trying to avoid that. You do some clearance work, and AI potentially could be helpful with clearance work. I mean, again, you might be putting confidential business information, a name you're thinking about choosing into an AI system, so you do have to be careful. But that type of research, like an initial cut that you can send to me and give me a little report, it could be very useful to at least point me to some things that I should look at, not necessarily the universe, but at least here's some things that we saw that you might want to take a look at. That can be very helpful. It can also be helpful. Strategy wise, I'm not so sure it's very helpful, because again, that's where the 25 years plus of AI in my brain
I
comes
don't
in.
know about this AI definition. We got to come up with a different term for that, Mark.
Well,
It's
you
not
know, it,
artificial intelligence, I don't think. We got to come up with another.
Yeah, but if you really think about it, AI in a sense is just a way to access everything in the brain of the World Wide Web,
Fair.
So, but I think those are some ways to to help. I think that again, with on the patent side, clients may be saying, "Hey, listen, we came up with this new thing. Before we go to our attorney, let's poke around with AI and see if this is something that might be patentable." Again, got to be super careful. You don't want to make a disclosure. Here's another thing that's interesting we haven't really talked about, but clients are using AI to write code, and in some sense, I don't want to say do the invention work for them. Writing code to me is not necessarily an inventive process. If you're telling the system what you want it to do, code writing is pretty fungible activity unless it's very difficult things you're trying to code. But it becomes an issue in patent law if you're relying on an AI system to, you're getting really close to that line where is it the AI system that's the inventor, or is it the person that's the inventor? And the reason that's important is under the Copyright Act in the United States and under the patent laws, that you have to have human inventorship or human authorship to be able to register. I had a client probably a month ago. We submitted something to register some content as a copyright. And the Copyright Office responded and made us affirm that none of the content we were trying to register was generated by AI. And in our
Hmm.
case, it was true that it was not generated by AI, but you can't register AI generated material. If
Hmm.
it's a combination, you get the legal and the lawyer answer. It depends. But those are just, it's super interesting issues just in the world of IP law. I can't imagine what other areas of law are like.
I know, I think we probably covered this a little bit, but again, in the effort to do some show prep here, one of the things I was going to ask, and maybe you can elaborate on it, is, what areas of intellectual property work do you see AI genuinely being helpful? And I'm thinking for business owner perspective here, like do you see anything that you could say, no, that I know you talked a little bit about it already, but maybe you want to sort of expand or elaborate.
Yes. Well, I think the approach of, I think there are strategic ways that AI can be deployed well by clients as long as there are certain safeguards in place. I'll give you an example. Let's say a client invents something and they think it's patentable and they want to check AI and do some due diligence in that regard. Well, in the United States, you can file what's called a provisional patent application. And a provisional patent application has the details of your invention in it, but it's not public, and it lacks a little bit of the formality of a full-blown, what is called a non-provisional patent application. And by filing a provisional, you get your early filing date. So sometimes it may make sense to file that provisional. It's not that expensive. And then, because you've got your early filing date, then you can do some due diligence, not so much figuring out how to change your invention or anything, but to see if there are things out there. And it may be helpful to navigate what's already out there in the world, sort of in the vicinity of your invention as you move forward through the inventive process. You won't blow your filing date because you've already filed. And so that's a way clients can sort of, a strategy, file your provisional, then do the due diligence. And in that 1 year window while your provisional is pending, consult with your patent attorney, put the minds together, and that could be helpful. Again, trademark strategy, it may be helpful. I'd be a little reticent to put my possible trademark, brands or what have you into a public AI engine right out of the gate. But even there, you can file what's called an intent to use trademark application and then do some diligence if you want. So there are a lot of ways. And I think legal research, when cases and statutes, AI can definitely help there, but it's the same thing. Lawyers are getting in trouble left and right now. They're filing materials with courts and they're using AI to do the legal research and they're not
Hmm.
checking and they're
Hmm.
getting fined. It's called sanctioned in legal parlance. They're getting sanctioned. They're having to take continuing legal education classes on use of generative AI in litigation. Sometimes they're having to report to their clients exactly what happened, which is probably the most embarrassing out of
Yeah,
all
no
of that.
kidding.
And so that, not that we would advocate ever doing that, but in a sense, when a client comes to us with research, we are going to check it. And so that's where, again, we would flop back to, let's have that conversation up front, figure out how we're going to use AI, if at all, in the context of a project or a legal relationship. And let's figure out the ways to do it most efficiently, in a way that's going to be most helpful, and in a way that is going to not eat up a bunch of time and not be expensive for the client. So, and not delete or bypass the 25 years of, experience and intelligence your lawyers will probably have. So I think there's a use for it, but just don't cut out your lawyer and your lawyer's experience and know-how. Don't sort of take the lawyer out of the loop, um, thinking you might be saving money, because odds are if you present something to your lawyer, they should check it. And so it might wind up costing you more money. So again, we don't want the tail wagging the dog.
Yes, and try to avoid that do-it-yourselfer mentality. When you have access to high-level attorneys, take advantage of it. So, based on what we've talked about, and man, oh man, did we ever cover a lot? Uh, what's like, Mark? What's one piece of advice you would give to a business owner who's starting to use AI? Whether it's for legal or intellectual property matters or anything along those lines. What's one thing you would say, just as a starting point?
Verify, trust, but verify. Be careful. Just anecdotally, I will use AI as like a starting point, almost like I might use a law clerk or something like that to get me going on some information. And there are times when what AI is spitting out is just, it's claiming to support a legal proposition, but then when you dive into it and look at it, it's not.
Hmm.
And I understand that, but the clients need, that's where trust but verify and be careful comes in. And do your best to verify that what you are being told by the AI system is accurate. And that will be helpful if you're just bringing crude, crude, not in a, I mean just sort of raw is probably a better word, raw AI data to your attorney. They're going to spend some time
Yeah, I was
checking
going to
it.
say you just created a financial obligation that's just going to be a bit bigger than what you initially expected.
Yeah, and so it's we get the fact that what we do is expensive, and we get the fact that we want to do everything we can as efficiently as possible to save clients money. But at the same time, again, it goes back to let's have the conversation, figure out how best um, a client can help the attorneys. A lot of times what happens in the world that I'm in, trademarks, patents, copyrights, is you're going to look for other things that are similar. If you're in a litigation situation or what have you, AI can be brilliant for that. But let's make sure that that is what's called for in a given legal situation, before rushing off and doing it and saying, hey, look at this 30 pages of stuff I got of AI, and we spent 3 or 4 hours reviewing it, and you just spent, $1,500.
Right.
So,
Okay. I have to look at this, um, from a wealth management perspective, given the fact that that's kind of my lane. So, for the business owner who wants to make sure that their use of technology aligned with a strong legal protection, and again, I will add into that overall wealth preservation, something that, we do here at One Capital. What's a good step to consider? We want to try to merge in what Mark Nielsen does with what Wayne does. What's a good step to take here?
that's a fantastic question.
I'm
And
known to have the odd one, Mark. You're not
yes,
the only one.
well, and I don't always say this as a sort of tagline for myself, but one of the things that I do working with clients to register, trademarks and copyrights, and, get patent protection for them, is I build value in your company through intellectual property. Targeted, smart, strategic intellectual property filings build wealth. If you have a
Hmm.
business owner and they have a company, it's sometimes not easily explainable in the world of M&A and investment bankers, but good intellectual property in a company typically, I don't want to say always, but typically adds value to that company. Not always in a completely one-to-one, 100%, calculable, rational way, but it does. And, if you're thinking about AI, maybe just as a high level query, a client can say, how best can I maximize my business's value through strategic intellectual property registration? It'd be really interesting to see what AI comes up with on a question like that. And work with your lawyers, work with your advisors to figure out, because, listen, there are companies that spend a bundle on IP, and I kind of scratch my head and I say, man, why are they spending so much money on IP? It's like almost overkill. So there is strategy.
Hmm.
And you don't want to overspend because that lowers the value. Your profits go down, but good, solid intellectual property that protects the core areas of your business and your branding, it's a winner for
There
business
you
owners,
go.
for the value of the company, etc. So if you have a client that goes through a liquidity event, selling their company and the IP added to that, it's just going to be, better for you, more assets under management for you, more growth in their portfolio that you're managing. It's a win-win-win for everybody.
Mark, I'll tell you something. We covered a lot of ground today. And for the folks that are watching here, they're able to see, you and all, of course, but also how to get a hold of you. Your contact information is all there. But as I've said on previous podcasts, we have a lot of people who are listening on Apple and Spotify, maybe out for a walk, and they'd be listening on our website, YouTube, who knows? And for those folks, they can't see, your contact information. So for those folks who are listening and want to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Initially via email, mark.nielsen, Nielsen at Solid Counsel, SolidCounsel.com. Mark.nielsen at solidcounsel.com. Or I have my own sort of niche website, NielsenIPLegal.com, and there's a way to contact me through that as well, NielsenIPLegal.com. So those are the best ways to get me.
Mark, can't thank you enough for coming on the podcast. Very, very educational, very informative. Thanks very much. Great to see you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always fun to chat, and this is my universe here, so it's always good to hopefully enlighten folks on ways that they can work with their attorneys in a constructive, helpful way to deploy the resources that are now just coming at us like, just one day after another. It's new stuff. So Wayne, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Mark Nielsen is a business and intellectual property attorney and a partner with Texas-based Sheaf and Stone. Thanks, Mark. We'll see you soon.
You betcha. Thank you.
I look forward to bringing you the 3 Questions podcast, and I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. And to receive a notification of when our latest episode has been posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we will see you soon.